Sprint 21. How to think about funding. Funding decisions can make or break you as an aspiring entrepreneur even before you launch. Funding decisions need to be made thoughtfully by every aspiring and practicing entrepreneur. In this sprint, we go over the fundamental strategic decisions that prescribes which of two different paths you will likely be taking in funding your startup, whether it is for-profit or not-for-profit. We lay out how to think through whether you will want to use bedrock or high-risk funding methods to get the funds you will need. While data shows that 97% of all entrepreneurs go bedrock, many bedrock and high-risk entrepreneurs inadvertently use techniques suited for the alternate strategy, causing unnecessary rejections, wasted time, and sometimes unnecessary failures. This sprint helps you understand the choice, including for entrepreneurs interested in nonprofits. The two following sprints go into details of how you prepare for one or the other type of funding. How to think about funding, written and read by Derek Liedau.
Almost all founders want to jump to the question, how can I get funding for my great idea? We promise you that this is not the question to ask, for two reasons. First, ideas are not valuable unless there's proof that the idea will make scores of people happy enough to gladly give money in return for owning or enjoying it. Even then, an idea that is supported with data still carries significant risk for an outside investor who is a stranger. Even when you have the data, as from our sprints 3 through 6, stranger investors will consider you too risky to invest in because they do not know you and your capabilities. The fact is that most founders lose interest in their idea when the hard work of turning an idea into reality starts to pile up. Strangers are on solid ground being skeptical of investing in a good idea being led by a person they have not worked with before. Second, a founder should be discerning about what sort of funding they consider accepting and under what conditions they'd be willing to accept the funding. Many successful founders regret accepting funding from one or more of their investors. There are many things that can cause these regrets. We want to lay out how funding is a strategic decision and how to systematically develop your own funding strategy. There are 2 follow-on sprints, each focused on the 2 different funding strategies. In these sprints, we'll get into the details of how to use each of the strategies to think about and prepare to fund your idea. At this point, we pose a strategic question. Bedrock or high risk? There are 2 distinctly different and divergent groups of entrepreneurial strategies, bedrock and high risk. You need to decide early on which of these groups you want to operate in because they will play a big role in how you might want to raise money. Here is how the 2 groups diverge. Bedrock entrepreneurs want to reduce the risk of their personal loss of money, status, and relationships. High-risk entrepreneurs want to maximize personal gain as measured in some combination of money, status, and networks of relationships. Bedrock entrepreneurs want to make sure they minimize the risks in taking any next steps towards creating a solidly profitable business, while high-risk entrepreneurs want to shoot for the moon and fail fast if their idea isn't going to take off. Bedrock entrepreneurs cannot justify failure as acceptable because of the losses it could entail and the relationships it could hurt. High-risk entrepreneurs view failure as a learning experience. Bedrock entrepreneurs want to build and grow their businesses based upon the profits they make. High-risk entrepreneurs want to build their businesses using other people's money. Bedrock entrepreneurs measure their success based upon achieving personal goals, while high-risk entrepreneurs measure their success by the value of their company's stock. Bedrock entrepreneurs view partnering with strangers as risky and something to be avoided, while high-risk entrepreneurs view partnering with strangers as less risky than not having enough money to invest. Bedrock entrepreneurs, unless they're already incredibly wealthy, avoid capital intensive businesses where it could take years to build infrastructure. Nonprofit organizations are all bedrock. The founders of nonprofits are always the initial funders if any funding is actually required. The donors that support nonprofits and make them viable and self sustaining are actually the customers and not the investors. To put this into further context, the latest government data indicates that less than 3% of all the founders are high risk and receive any investment from an angel or a VC. Almost 30% of all the companies founded that have additional employees are founded solely based upon savings, and no other funding is required. For solopreneurs, 60% require no funding at all. Of the bedrock entrepreneurs that seek additional funding, about 1/3 use their credit cards to fund their startup, and a quarter take out a bank loan, often in the form of a mortgage. 14% of bedrock entrepreneurs receive a loan or investment from family and friends. How the strategies differ. If you are a bedrock entrepreneur, the focus is on how fast you can get to be cash flow positive. You strategize about how little investment can be required to get you there. Successful entrepreneurs are frugal, but they do not skimp on investing in people and assets that measurably improve their chances of becoming profitable faster. Bedrock financial planning focuses on time to break even and what investments are critical to success. If you're a high-risk entrepreneur, your strategy focuses on how fast you can grow and what are the risks that can prevent you from growing that fast. These are the two most important dimensions that investors, whether angels or professional VC, will use to evaluate whether you're worthy of their money. As a high-risk entrepreneur, you want to get to a working prototype and you want to get it in front of large numbers of potential customers and angels as quickly as possible. You want to fund as much of the prototyping as possible yourself because any stranger that's interested in investing in an idea without an exciting, working, successful prototype is suspect and should be avoided. The only exception might be VCs wanting to invest in some super successful serial entrepreneur's next idea. At this point, the strategies for deciding on your best next step diverge based upon which group you want to be in. Once you start raising money using one strategy, it can be almost impossible to switch to the other. To properly decide which type of funding is best for you to pursue, it will be important for you to have done the work specified in sprints 3 through 6. These sprints led you through the process of conducting interviews with potential customers and helped you analyze the results that now make you confident you understand your target persona, potential pricing, and your potential initial revenues. We also assume you've done the exercises outlined in Sprint 18 on planning so that you understand your costs, timing, and availability of critical resources. You need all this information and analysis to figure out if you want or need to be a high-risk entrepreneur, or if you're better off being bedrock. The next 2 sprints focus on how to prepare to fund your startup as either a bedrock or high-risk entrepreneur.
Sprint exercise. Now that you've read or listened to our article, How to Think About Funding, please answer for yourself. Do you think you are a bedrock entrepreneur or high risk? What questions do you have about which funding strategy you think you'll be pursuing? We will help you to be more confident with your answers to these questions in the next 2 sprints.